Welcome to Fright Night. For real. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the classic 1985 Fright Night. Yes, this movie came out August 2nd of 1985. It's rated R, hour and 46 minutes long, had a budget of $9 million, which $1 million of that went towards the special effects, which are fantastic. And when the movie was released that summer, it grossed $24.9 million. So this was a nice return on investment for Columbia Pictures. Now, this is Tom Holland's directorial debut. He had written some successful films, some of which were Class of 1984, which subsequently also starred Roddy McDowall in a role in that film. He also wrote The Great Psycho 2, which is a great sequel. If you've never seen it, check it out. I'll do a review on that eventually. Then after this film, he went on to do Child's Play. He wrote and directed that film, which Chris Sarandon, who plays Jerry Dandridge in this film, went on to play the detective in Child's Play. So he wrote a couple successful films, and he had an idea for a movie where this teenage boy is convinced that his next-door neighbor is a vampire. And after he got the rest of the idea for like a late-night television host, horror host, and all this, he wrote the script in 3 weeks. He took it to Columbia. They liked it, so they decided to take a chance on this young man, and they let him direct this film. Now, Tom Holland hired William Ragsdale as Charlie Brewster. He's our main protagonist. And we have Chris Sarandon as Jerry Dandridge, and Chris Sarandon's gloriously awesome in this film. Amanda Bearse is in this film as Amy. Now, Amanda Bearse is mostly known for Married with Children. She played Marcy on that film, in that TV series. It ran for a long time. I used to love that. I watched that show religiously back then. That and this are pretty much the two things I know Amanda Bearse from. I've never seen her in anything else but these films. And now, Peter Vincent's character is played by Roddy McDowall, but he was not the original actor that the role was written for. It was originally written for Vincent Price. But around this time, Vincent Price's health was not the greatest, so he could not do the role. And so Tom Holland remembered Roddy McDowall from Class of 1984, so he went to Roddy McDowall. Roddy McDowall read the script and signed on immediately. He wanted to do it. We also got Stephen Jeffries as Evil Ed, Charlie's best friend, and Jonathan Stark as Billy Cole. Billy Cole's kind of like Jerry Dandridge's right-hand man. Like, he protects Jerry Dandridge while he's sleeping during the day. He's like his caretaker while he's sleeping. That's kind of his character. Now, this film starts off at night. Charlie's in his bedroom with his girlfriend Amy, and they're making out. And Fright Night, the TV show, is on in the background. We see Peter Vincent hosting the show and introducing this film. And Charlie and Amy get into a little bit of an argument because Charlie wants to have sex, and Amy tells him she's not ready, she's nervous. And Charlie's like, well, we've been dating for almost a year. Don't you think it's time? And they kind of argue back and forth. And Charlie calms down, but he gets up and walks to the window. Now, Charlie's a big horror fan. He stays up every night. You get to sense and watches Peter Vincent every night. And he believes Peter Vincent, like, he's very impressionable about the fact that Peter Vincent is a real vampire killer, which comes into play later. And then we see that he's not. He's very much a cowardly person because he's just an actor. He's not this big, bad vampire killer. But Charlie's at the window, and he notices these two gentlemen carrying a coffin into the house next door, which he found that the house was just sold. It was for sale for a while. And he's watching, and Amy takes off her top and is like, okay, Charlie, I'm ready. Let's do this. And Charlie's ignoring her, and she gets pissed off and leaves. And that's pretty much our introduction to the film, of these characters that we're going to spend the runtime with. And the next morning, his mom tells him about, oh, yeah, we got a new neighbor. His name's Jerry Dandridge, and it'd be nice to have somebody new in the neighborhood. And Charlie goes to school, and we're introduced to Evil Ed, and they're kind of they're friends. Him and Evil Ed are friends, best friends, And they're both kind of into horror, but they're both kind of dorky, but Charlie's kind of not as dorky as Evil Ed, I guess I would say. And so Charlie goes home that night, and he's up again late watching TV, and there's been these murders in town, and they've been finding these decapitated bodies. And Charlie sees Jerry Dandridge with this woman in a window right across from his, and the woman has her back to Jerry Dandridge, and Jerry Dandridge walks up to her, starts kissing her neck, and he goes like this, and his fangs come down, and Charlie sees it. And Jerry's about to go down to bite this woman, and his eyes glance up, and he sees Charlie, and he gives him a stone cold stare, and he slowly pulls down the blind, and you hear a scream. Charlie tries to go get his mom because he knows that he's a vampire living next door, and he just killed this woman. His mom kind of blows him off. He runs downstairs, goes outside, and there's Billy Cole carrying what looks like a body in a trash bag out to this Jeep that they have. And then Jerry Dandridge appears and gives him the purse, the woman's purse to get rid of. And Charlie's mom comes out in the porch and starts yelling, "Charlie, are you out here?" And both men turn and look. And Jerry Dandridge is eating this apple, and he throws it, and it lands right in front of Charlie. And he takes a step towards Charlie, and Charlie gets up and runs in the house. And Jerry could have killed him right there, but he doesn't. They go in the house, and the next day he goes to school and tries to tell Evil Ed about it. Evil Ed thinks he's crazy. He's making fun of him. And so he thinks he's, and he goes to Evil Ed's house, and he pays him $8 to give him some tips on vampires. And he goes, well, as long as you don't invite him in the house, you have nothing to worry about. Because they definitely follow the old school vampire rules. Like, the vampire has to be invited in. Holy water works. Crosses work, and a stake through the heart. Sunlight kills them. So they go with the basics. They don't deviate from that at all. They're not trying to reinvent the vampire lore wheel here. They're definitely sticking within that realm. It's just a modern take, or 80s take, on the myths of vampirism. Now, Charlie's like, he goes home and he's upstairs in his bedroom doing homework, and his mom calls him down. He comes downstairs and he sees somebody sitting in one chair. His mom's standing there, and he's just tapping the side of the chair. And his mom's like, "I want you to meet our new neighbor, Jerry Dandridge. I invited him over for a drink." And Jerry turns and he's all smiles and he gets up. And Chris Sarandon's so great in this role. He goes from charismatic to very menacing with his looks and his demeanor to even cracking jokes. He walks that fine line between all three, and it's fantastic. So now Charlie knows he's been invited in, and he even makes mention, he goes, "Now I feel like I'll stop over whenever I want. I'll be stopping over all the time." And he goes, "With your mother's permission, of course." And he starts joking, and he starts laughing. So Charlie knows he's coming for him that night. So Charlie's upstairs in his room waiting for him. And he shows up, and he tells Charlie, "You leave me alone, forget about me, and I'll leave you alone." But Charlie doesn't. He pushes it, he pulls out a cross, and Jerry just is going to kill him. And Charlie happens to stab him through a hand with a wooden pencil, and his mom starts yelling, and Jerry leaves and wrecks his car and then goes back to his house. And he calls him then and pretty much tells him, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you soon." And he goes to school and he tells his friends, Amy and Evil Ed, that he's going to kill his neighbor. Like, he's sharpening stakes, and that I'm going to go kill him. I'm going to put a stake right through his heart. So they go and get Peter Vincent, who sets up with Jerry Dandridge. They're going to come over with Charlie that night, and they want him to drink holy water in front of Charlie to prove that Charlie is not a vampire. Now, obviously, Jerry Dandridge is a vampire, so he asks Peter Vincent, "Is this real holy water?" He's like, "No, it's just tap water." So they go, and it's a great scene with Billy Cole and Jerry Dandridge and these kids and Peter Vincent. And he drinks the holy water, and Charlie's still not convinced, but they're getting ready to leave. And Peter Vincent's all happy, thinks he's saving this kid from making a huge mistake. And on his way out the door, he pulls out this mirror and he looks in it. And he realizes Jerry Dandridge doesn't have a reflection. And he gets panicked and he just walks out. Charlie chases after him. He goes, "What'd you see? What'd you see? You saw something." And he goes, "He didn't have a reflection. I have to go." And he takes off because Peter Vincent's actually a coward. He's just an actor. He's not this big tough guy, like I said. He's just this actor playing a role. And Charlie thinks he's this tough, like he looks up to him. He's loved his movies. He's looked up to him. So he has almost like this idolization of this guy, but he's nothing like his character, which most actors aren't. So Charlie and Evil Ed walk Amy home, and there's a fantastic scene with Evil Ed in an alley where Jerry ambushes him and turns him into a vampire. And then he goes for Amy, because when Amy came to the house and Jerry Dandridge sees him, he realizes she reminds him very much so of somebody he loved in the past, which kind of humanizes him a little bit, doesn't make him a total monster, although he is a monster, no doubt. So he follows Charlie and Amy into this club in a fantastic scene with some cheesy 80s techno music playing, and takes Amy for himself. And now Peter Vincent and Charlie have to go to his house to save Amy and have a final battle with Jerry Dandridge. Peter Vincent gets talked into going. He finally grows a spine and goes. And Evil Ed confronts Peter Vincent a couple times. I skipped over that, but I don't want to go through everything. And then finally at the end, I'm skipping over some things, but you have to watch the movie if you've never seen it. They kill Peter Vincent and they win the day and everybody's happy. And Peter Vincent gets his show back. He even gives Charlie a shout out. And all is well at the end of the film. Now, they did make a sequel, which I am going to watch tonight, and I'm going to have a review out by Wednesday. The sequel is criminally underrated. It's actually a really good sequel directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. We'll talk about that in a few days. Fright Night to me is one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. It's definitely in my top 3. When I did my top 10 list of vampire films, it was in my top 3. I love this film. I've loved it since I was a kid. It's well acted. Chris Sarandon is fantastic. I believe these kids are in high school. They act like kids in high school, and it's well directed. Roddy McDowall is fantastic as this cowardly figure that Charlie thinks is like this big tough guy. It's just a really fun vampire film with some awesome special effects. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. I give Fright Night a 9.5 out of 10. Yes, a 9.5 out of 10 for Fright Night, the original 1985. And I did remake this film with Colin Farrell as Jerry Dandridge. I do like the remake. I just don't think it's nowhere near as good as the original. It doesn't have the charm of the original, but I do enjoy the remake. I'll review that eventually. Yes, 9.5 out of 10 for Fright Night. Have you ever seen this film? Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this classic. Leave a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. Share this video. I'd appreciate that as well. I'll be back in 2 days with Fright Night 2. You all stay safe out there, and I'll be back soon. Thanks. Bye.